All right. Hello, everyone. How are you going? Do you like the event? The content is good? Hope after this session we'll have the same mind. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining here. My name is Piotr. I'm a software developer working at Valo Intranet. I live in Poland, in Krakow. I have quite a lot of experience in both administration and development side in SharePoint. Started working with SharePoint on 2010 with the 2010 version, then switched to through all the premises versions, and now working mostly with Office 365 with TypeScript, C#, Azure Functions, PowerShell, so all the full stack really. And today I'm going to talk a bit about working with SharePoint REST APIs. But let's start with this slide. So thanks a lot for all the sponsors. Without you, this event could not be possible, just simply. You just rocks. Thanks a lot. If someone still does not have the password for Wi-Fi, that's the proper moment. Yeah, still? Yeah? Let's wait a couple of seconds. Sorry? OK. I can switch like that. OK. If it's really interesting. Maybe. Yeah. OK, but let's switch right now to the real content. Let's start with the question, what is REST? I still remember this first question during my interview, well, like 10 or 12 years ago, as a student. I received this question, what is REST? And I responded, yeah, it's this cool protocol that allows us to access the data that has this cool mapping between HTTP methods and the CRUD methods, And of course, this is not correct. So what, in fact, is REST? REST is an abbreviation from representational state transfer. It's an idea, an abstraction, a concept proposed by a really smart person, Roy, in 2000, that's purpose was to ease the process of communication between the client and the server, just to get rid of these complex methods like SOAP, like CORBA, like remote call procedure, to make something really simple and light. REST is really oriented on the resource. So every single time that we are working or executing the queries, we are focusing on the resource. Everything is about that. And of course, as it's a concept, it does not have to be implemented on HTTP with JSON. It's the most popular way of implementing that. But in fact, we can implement it however we want. So we're just focusing on creation of web APIs, right? And we should follow 6 guidelines or 6 constraints. First one, client-server. So the main assumption with the REST is that we have an architecture with the separation of concerns. Like we have a client who is executing the queries, and we have a server who is responding. Pretty straightforward. Then we have to remember that it's stateless. So we do not keep any kind of session information on the server, and every single request that is coming to our web API, to our server, should have or must have all required information to be executed correctly. So if something is going wrong, it means that maybe we didn't provide the correct information. It should be cacheable. So it means that server can answer that the property that you're requesting can be cached and can be stored, for example, for 2 days on your site. And this way, you're not executing the same request again, because you're able just to cache it, to store it in your local storage, session storage, just to improve the performance, just to make it working faster. Uniform interface. So it's about the resource, right? It means that every single resource should have a unique identifier. So when we are executing a query or just a request, we are referring to a unique identifier of the resource. And the resource can be everything. It can be list item, it can be document, it can be collection, it can be web service, it can be everything. But it has to have a unique identifier. It has to provide three things like data, metadata, and hyperlinks or hypermedia. It has to also provide information what the response looks like what type of media type it looks like. Is it XML, is it JSON, or is it something else? Additional principle is that we do not care about the complexity on the server side. We should not be aware how the structure looks like there. Maybe there is a proxy that redirects our request to authentication server or to some other server, some other layer. These layers should be transparent to the whole system. And last, what is called optional is that it should support some kind of extensibility on the client side. So this principle means that whenever we do not support something on the client side, we can go to the server, grab the code on demand, and download it and execute it, right? These are the 6 principles that should make the REST implementation so-called pure REST. OK, a couple of words about the resource. As I said, the resource can be anything, like document, like in SharePoint case, list item collection, list, website, whatever. It has to have some metadata. Like, for example, the collection might have the metadata item count, right? So answering the question, how many items exist in this collection? And it should also have something called hypermedia. What is this hypermedia? It's additional metadata that provides us an information what we can do with this item. So for example, we should provide with our response to the client an information with the path or URL with the, that allows us to edit this list item, for example. Or if we have pretty big collection, maybe we'll return only part of the collection and provide a link to get additional set, right? So this is kind of metadata that we use to improve the client's features, feasibility to perform better. Sorry. OK, and now, when we know what is REST already, we know these principles and we know how to implement them, we can start doing our web API, web services. So the implementation of the REST, we used to call RESTful. So if we mean that our web services, our web API is RESTful, we mean that it implements these 6 principles. Of course, it's an ideal world, right? It's really difficult to implement all of that and to keep everything separated, everything pure, RESTful, etc. But at least we should try to make that. The usual implementation of the RESTful APIs are based on HTTP protocol with this mapping between HTTP methods and CRUD. So for the create resource, we usually use post method for read, get, update, put, and delete. Usually we used to work with JSON as the data model for the cooperation, but it's not required. We can use YAML, we can use XML. Atom and XML is a default one in SharePoint, right? So we can use every single data model that we want, but we have to be sure that the browser or the client will support that, right? OK, so how does it look in a SharePoint world? In fact, in SharePoint, we use only we can use only 2 HTTP methods. The first one is get, and the second one is post. In case we would like to execute something else, like delete, merge, patch, or whatever else, we are using a special header is xHTTP method to provide what method we would like to execute. It's because most of the browsers or firewalls do not support any other HTTP methods than get and post. So just to get rid of this restriction, we can use this xHTTP method header to avoid the problems with executing our requests. OK, so right now, the first most simple way to execute the REST query. We are just going to open our browser, paste the correct URL, and that's done. OK? We are executing our first REST query. The browser will handle all the authentication stuff and etc. But that's the most simple way. So if we will do that, we'll send an HTTP GET method, HTTP GET request, sorry, to our SharePoint or Office 365 server, and we'll provide the correct endpoint. The endpoint that is representing the resource, right? It's a representation of the resource. For example, API web. Let's do that. So I don't know if the quality of the screen is good enough, but here I have prepared a simple web part. It's an SPFX web part that does nothing else than executing the REST queries. It's using ASP HTTP client with the correct method that can be selected from the dropdown. And that's it. So if you will go here and click execute, sorry, OK, we see that we have received some information about our SP web. It provides us some metadata. It doesn't provide us any kind of hypermedia, because I have set to on the web part level. Let me quickly change that. That I will use no metadata in my accept and content type headers. Let's quickly change it and execute it again. And now, as you can see, we have quite a lot of additional information, like, OK, do you want to get some additional information about role assignments? Here is the URL. Just get this URL, execute additional query, right? So it depends on what OData type, which I'm going to talk about later, will set. It will give us a slightly different result. But what we can do with our GET request? For example, we can go and grab the information about some maybe lists available on this site. So as I said, every single resource has its unique identifier. And in the lists, in regards of the list, it's just simple lists, right? So if I will click execute, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. OK, we have received quite a lot of information about lists available on this site. Maybe I will quickly change to get less data. Yeah, looks better. Yeah. And now we have information, for example, if this list allows content types, if this list, when this list has been created, or something else. OK, that's cool. We can grab quite a lot of interesting information. We can grab information about lists, list items, which we are going to see later on. We can do whatever we want with this data. But what if I would like to create something or edit something? So let's come back to our presentation. For creation new items, we'll use HTTP post. And this is pretty straightforward, right? So we are just preparing our JSON that describes what metadata, what fields should have which values. And we are just executing this post query to the correct endpoint of the list. In this case, it's going to be list with items. And that's it. So let's try to do that. just to show you, I have this simple test list, which doesn't, just refresh it, doesn't contain any list items, but it has only one single field, which is called title. I will quickly republish this page. OK. Maybe, sorry, just try to make the URL field look better. Is the font OK, or you would like to make it bigger? It's OK? OK. So now we would like to create a list item in our test list. So what we'll do, we'll just grab the information about our list. Sorry, it's get by title. The list name is test list, nothing really special. And items. OK, and we don't want to execute get. We would like to create something. So we'll just execute a post. And we'll just paste here a JSON object, which tells that, OK, we are going to create a list item. And we are going to assign to our title of this list item, new list item. Let's execute it. OK. What has happened? We have received the information from SharePoint that the status code of the HTTP response is 201. It's OK. We have some information about the headers, but let's skip it for a moment. And we have the information about newly created list item. It has an ID with value 3. Oh, sorry. With 3. It has some content type, some additional metadata when it has been created. So if we'll refresh site here, yeah, here is our new list item. OK. Really super easy way to create list item, right? We don't have to create this new list item information object, assign the correct properties, add it to the list. Just send one simple HTTP request, and that's it. OK. Now, what if I would like to update my list item? We have to, of course, send additional different HTTP requests, which may contain two methods. It's merge or patch. In case of merge and patch, we are passing only the item properties, which has to be updated. We don't have to provide all the required properties, even if the property is required, but we have to pass only the information that we want to update. If we are going to use put to execute this method, we have to provide all the required properties. In our case, we'll receive the bad request response. OK, so let's try to do something. Let's come back to our web part. And let's say, OK, I will copy that. I would like to merge. I will inform the web part, inform SharePoint that I would like to update the list item with the unique identifier of 3, because this is the ID of our list item. And I will provide a new title, like, for example, SPS Madrid rocks. OK, execute. So far, so good. If we'll right now come back here and execute the get of this list item, we can see that the title has been updated. Super easy, isn't it? OK. Now, when we know how to update list items, we have the last part. What we should send in case we would like to delete something. It's not so complex anymore, like every single other method. So we just send an HTTP request with delete method as a post, of course, and that's it, right? We specify the identifier. So in that case, it would be items 3, and it should be done. There is one bug in SharePoint, in fact, because according to Microsoft documentation, every single resource that should be put in the recycle bin when it's deleted, when we are executing the REST query with delete method, it should go to the recycle bin, right? So I'm sending the REST delete, and the list item should go to recycle bin. And in fact, it's not true. It's removed completely. So if you would like to put this resource in the recycle bin, we should call on this object a method recycle. Let's try to do that. So firstly, I will create the same list item. I will create new list item just to have 2 right now. So I will just delete the items. I will post. I will create some dummy list item with a new title. OK, now we have 2 list items. Yeah, and let's execute the delete on the item with ID 4. OK, execute. If we'll go to recycle bin, we can see that it's not here, but it's not in our list anymore as well. Yeah, but if we'll go and get the item with the ID 3 and specify the method recycle, execute. Now we can see that this list item is put into our recycle bin. So this is a bug. We have to remember about that. OK, maybe 2 words about the authentication. Right now, with SPHTP client, we are using OAuth. So we have to have 2 things to authorize to the SharePoint. The first thing is authorization token, a bearer token. That's the thing that requires us that allows us to authenticate to SharePoint. And the second thing is the bearer token, request digest. And this is only required if we are executing the changes, like delete or update. If we are executing the get, we don't have to provide it. And the request digest has a very short, maybe not so short, like some really short time frame that is valid. So when we are working with the request digest, we have to ensure that it's updated, because otherwise we'll just be rejected with our query. If we are using PNP or SPHTP client, we don't care about it. We just assume that this is going to put correctly in our headers when we are executing the query. But if you are working with something else, like jQuery or XML HTTP request object, we have to provide it manually. All right. So what kind of headers or properties we can use, and I find useful, when we are working with REST? So first of all, let's remind ourselves what is a content type. This is the information about media type of the request that we are sending. Doesn't matter if we are sending it from server to the client or from client to the server. It contains the information about the current request. The default one in SharePoint is Atom. So if we'll go to the browser, HTTP, let's do it here, API web. Hope this site collection exists. Yeah, we'll receive XML. If we want to change it, we have to specify the header that will tell SharePoint, hey, OK, sorry, I'm talking about accept right now. But anyway, SharePoint provides us the information with this request. Sorry, it's come here. With this request that it's going to return the XML. So if I will open right now DevTools, view in the, we can do it. View in the network tab. I'll make it bigger. Refresh. Here it is. Request. Yeah, it tells us that, OK, you requested for this data, and what you will receive is ATOM plus XML. So this is the metadata that allows client to process the data. OK, that was easy. The second really important one is the accept header. So this one tells what response type, what media type of the response we are expecting from the server. When we are sending the HTTP GET request, for example, we would like to specify that, OK, I don't know how to handle XML, but I pretty well know JSON. So I would expect to get the JSON. I don't want to see this XML, because it's too much data, it's too heavy. I want to have XML, JSON, sorry. It also allows us, in regards of SharePoint, to specify how much data we'd like to get. Since 2014, SharePoint supports 3 types of OData type that allows us to control how much metadata we receive back from the server. Like, it was you could see it in this web part. Where is it? Sorry. I'll quickly close that and open it again. Yeah, like you could see it here, where we can specify what kind of OData type we would like to send in the accept header. So it means that it will give us full verbose metadata with all the links for all the properties of the object, with minimal metadata, like the metadata in regards about the current object, not about all the properties available, but the current object, or no metadata at all. Which is pretty good, because it allows us to minimize the amount of the transfer data, right? We should still think about how we can improve the performance, how we can improve the quality of our applications, our web parts, because it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we are working from the office. We have this really high speed connection to the internet. But imagine a situation when you are sitting in a train with the lo-fi or on the edge, and we are trying to obtain the data, and you're going to receive the full-blown XML with all metadata. You just don't need it, right? You just don't care about it. You would like to get only the piece that is important for you. So how does it look like? In fact, it allows us to minimize the amount of data that we received from verbose to no metadata more than 2 times. So in case we'll execute the request to get the information about the web with verbose OData type, we'll receive around 110 kilobytes of information. But if we will skip the metadata, we can lower that to 37 kilos. That's pretty huge improvement, isn't it? Yeah, and additional really helpful method or property that we should get used to is IfMatch. What's that? This one specifies what will happen if nothing happens or we would like to modify the resource. So in case, let's imagine we have an object that requires quite a lot of processing on the SharePoint side to be evaluated. If we'll specify that, OK, give me this object, but if it hasn't been modified since then, I don't really care. And with this information, SharePoint can just cache it and return it from the cache. It also allows us to specify, OK, I would like to delete this list item, but I'm not pretty sure if it hasn't been modified. Maybe it now contains the valid data, or someone else has modified it, or maybe it's already deleted. I don't know. So that's why we have this tag, which provides us the information about the current status of the object. If we'll pass it with our request, we'll tell SharePoint, OK, I would like to delete this list item, but only if tag matches the previous state of the object. If it's different, then we'll receive the answer, OK, the object has been modified. I don't want to. You will now have to decide what to do with it. That's pretty pretty powerful as well. This ETAG looks like that. It contains the ID, the correlation ID, and the ETAG as a number, simply. OK. Now, we've been talking a few words already about OData. But what's OData? In fact, OData is a protocol that allows us to get rid about all these super annoying things like the structure of the headers, like the convention of the URL that we should prepare, like the HTTP mapping between the CRUD and the HTTP methods. It's just there. It's a specification that we can go, use, and implement. So we don't worry if we are going to do something in a different way. We just have guidelines how the API should be implemented. There is one gotcha here, because SharePoint supports right now OData in version 3. We can check it. It will execute the query to $metadata API endpoint. Let's quickly do that. So I will grab the name of my tenant. Sorry, not this browser. Now better. /_API $metadata. There is a typo. It's API, not APIT. OK. Yeah, there's additional character here. Now it's going to reply us. And with this information, with this endpoint, we'll get the information about our API. And as we can see here, it supports OData in version 3. But the bug I'm talking about right now is that the default OData version header that SP HTTP client adds to every single request, it's 4.0. So it means that we are sending the request with the assumption that we want to use version 4, but SharePoint does not handle that. And in fact, we are always returned with a bad request. So just to fix that, we should always keep in mind that we should add the OData version header with 3.0 or empty, just to override the default value coming from SP HTTP client. OK, but what does it mean, this OData thing? In fact, it provides us pretty powerful properties that we can use in our REST queries to select, filter, or modify our data. So in fact, let's start with these two first properties, select and expand. What does it mean? OK, as I said before, maybe I don't want to get the information about whole list item. Maybe I would like to get the information only about the title. I don't care about 100 other fields available there. I just want to get this single field. And we can do it with the select, right? We can specify, we can tell SharePoint that, hey, man, I don't want to get the information about all the properties available in the list item. I just want to get the title of the list item. So let's quickly change to SharePoint. And I would like to show you one thing. OK, oops, sorry. I have prepared a document library that contains images of the beers. Like, I know that in Spain you prefer wine. I'm not the wine guy. I'm more into the beer, so that's why I choose beers. So the document library is organized in the way that in the folders, the folder names represent the style of the beer. And it also contains the image of the beer with some additional information. What type is it? How much does it cost? How much alcohol it has, etc. So we'll use this as our reference to execute some REST queries just to have some real data, or at least interesting data for me, to get some info. So if we'll go to our web part, sorry. And if I will, for example, would like to get the information about the titles and IDs and content type, for example, of my beers, I would execute this kind of query. Yeah, I want to refer to lists with get by title beers. I want to query the items collection, items resource. And now I would like to select a title of the beers, ID, and for example, content type. Hope the query is valid. Let's try to execute it. Yeah, here it is. We have an array of our beers, right? We have British origin ales with ID 129, etc., etc. OK, now, what is worth to remember is that SharePoint does not return the information about the hidden fields. So if we have a hidden field, and we would like to get the information about the value of this field, we have to pass it manually. So in this case, let's get the information about file name of this list items. So I will just here provide file, or maybe, yeah, file leaf ref. This column is hidden. No, this one is not, but file ref is hidden. If I will hit execute, I can grab the information about the hidden column, which is pretty cool. What else I can do with the select and expand? Well, in fact, we would like to get the information about more complex fields, like, for example, author, or a taxonomy field, that lookup fields. So if we'll, for example, create a query that will return us the information about the drink type, which is a taxonomy column, I will do it like that. Just to make it quicker, I will execute the query with only one result on only one item. So let's call it, well, maybe 1,000. And select everything. Yeah, we have this information about drink type. And there is a bug, another bug in SharePoint. We have pretty a lot of bugs. But this one is pretty annoying because, as you can see, we have information about the drink type, but we don't have a label of this taxonomy item, right? So here it is, if someone does not see, drink type. We have the label is an ID of the list item that represents this term in the taxonomy hidden list. So just to get a workaround of that, about that, we can use this select with the taxonomy hidden field that will allow us to expand the term label. So how to do that? Let me copy the correct URL. I will this time copy it just to make it a bit faster. So what is going on here? Oh, sorry, this is not this one. This is this one. Yeah, so what we are going to do here, on the same beer, with ID 1000, I'm going to select the tax catch-all, which contains the information about our taxonomy items assigned to our list item. And I will say, OK, expand the property term, which contains the label of the term, and directly need to say SharePoint expand this object. If I will execute that, yeah, we can see that we received the label of the term of the list item. This is a workaround about the bug because the taxonomy representation is still bugging SharePoint with the rest, of course. Okay, so that was about the taxonomy. Additional property that we can use to work with the data, which is really extremely powerful and useful, is filter. In fact, filter does what it means. So we are able to filter the data that we would like to receive, right? So what we can do? For example, we can decide, OK, I would like to receive all the items where title equals some beer name. So if I will come back to our report and execute the query, give me all the details, or some details, some properties, about the item that title equals old chap. I'm executing on the whole collection endpoint, and the result will be just the single list item, which was pretty fast, wasn't it? In fact, we are querying SharePoint without the ID of the item, but we are receiving the answer pretty immediately. What else we can do? Well, OK, maybe we would like to get the information about the beers, that contains in its name ale. Like, I would like to get the information about all ales available in my list. So let's try to create this query. How it's going to look like is that select me some file name, because we are working with document library, and filter all the items that contains ale in the property fileIfRef, so in the file name, right? I'm going to execute that. OK, there is a mistake here. I should not use to lower. I'm getting the wrong result. Yeah, and now I have received the information about all the items that contains this ale string in the file name, which is pretty cool, because usually it happens that, OK, user knows something, but he does not know the correct name of the item that he looks like, and we can filter it, and it's really fast. Okay, let's come back here. It also provides us methods to create a more complex conditions, like the greater in terms of alcohol, for example, or I would like to get all ales that have an alcohol unit more than 5%, or it allows us also to work with dates and with some float numbers. So let's try to execute a query. Maybe this one. And now we are going to look for the, sorry. Now we are going to look for all the beers that contains ale, and we are going to create additional condition that it might be also, it has to be an image, because before, as you could see, we had folders and images. So now we are going to execute the query that contains in the file name PNG, so it's going to be an image, and we are going to sort about the amount of alcohol. And voila, we have some results. In fact, we can execute a query that will allow us to grab, for example, all the ales, or top 3 ales with the top parameter that are assorted based on the alcohol amount. And yeah, here it is. Our winner is going to be New Holland Brewing anniversary ale, which contains 40% of alcohol. This is a random number. I don't know if this beer contains so much alcohol, but anyway. Three additional properties, like top. We can select amount of first results that are going to be received. We can skip some part of the results that are in our collection. For example, let's skip first 10 results and let's grab the next one. And we can order or sort the result set based on the field value. Okay. What is really important here is that we are executing everything on the server side. We don't care about, we are not executing in the browser. So it's, first of all, it's much faster. And we just simplify our logic of the application of our web part, for example, in this term, by putting every single, all the requirements in our REST OData query. Maybe two additional words about what we can use to work with SharePoint REST API without struggling a lot. So the first option would be SPHTP client. So this is the class or object, in fact, that is available in the context object that provides us some extra functionalities. Like we don't have to care about authorization. We don't have to care about request digest. It provides some additional headers that are required to work with SharePoint. In fact, the one which is broken right now with OData version. It's available in SPFX framework. And the real good thing about that is that we don't have to load anything else on the site. Like, OK, we are on the site. We have this object. We can use it. And we don't have to worry about any additional framework loaded on our page, which is already kind of blown. And it's already pretty slow. The alternative about the client that we can use, the object that we can use to execute REST queries, is PNP.js. Did you work with PNP.js? OK, some of you. That's pretty cool. This is a powerful framework that provides a fluent API that allows us to work with different parts of SharePoint, and not only. We can work with graph. There is going to be a session today about a project with PNP.js. So it's really, really powerful. It also takes from us as the developers the responsibility to refresh the request digest, to pass additional headers. It allows us to configure it in the ways that we can specify what additional headers are going to be sent, for example. It supports batching, so we are executing few requests, HTTP requests in one post, let's say. And it supports quite a lot of modules that allows us to do something with our request. The interesting thing is that it supports the taxonomy module. In fact, there is no REST API for the taxonomy, but under the hood, the guys implemented it into the way that we are sending the request to SharePoint Web Services, the XML requests, prepared based on the client-side object model. But it's the same story when we work with it. So let me quickly show you how it looks like. It will be super, super fast, because we're running out of time. But anyway. And one thing that I wanted to mention about also is SP Editor. Do you know this Chrome extension? This Chrome extension allows us it's really, really powerful. It allows us to work with SharePoint, to list properties, to execute search queries. But it also contains the console of the PNP. And it's really, really cool, because it provides some kind of IntelliSense. So I can start writing the SP, web, something, something, something. It will tell me what properties are available in this object. And it allows me, additionally, to write the TypeScript here and execute the queries just in my console to be tested in a fly. As you can see, I have prepared the similar query that I try to use in my web part. So I provided the select OData parameters, I provided some filters, and I provided a top, right? So it's really, really nice, really powerful, and I recommend to use that because it helps a lot. But coming back quickly to our presentation. Oh, sorry, this. Okay. Maybe let's just to sum it up. What are the best practices, mine best practices at least, working with SharePoint REST API? Please remember only to fetch the data that you really would like to work with. SharePoint is already really heavy and slow. So if you are going to add these additional things that we don't really want, yeah, it's going to be only slower. And there is no purpose, right? Like every single project, this time I will do it in the correct way, please do it. Like grab only the fields that you really need. Really use the benefits of the TypeScript and cast the object that you're receiving from SharePoint to some strongly typed object, like create the interface which contains the fields that you are going to use. It's much easier then to debug it, it's much easier to find a problem, and it's much easier for other developers to come and jump directly into the project because they have this structure that can reuse. Cache as much as possible. Like, you know how the application works, you know what you can cache in local storage and a session storage. You will make it work faster, and you will just improve the performance of the application. Use e-tags to not perform too complex operation on the SharePoint side. If you know that you are going to receive or retrieve the permissions, pretty complex permissions of the web that requires quite a lot of processing time, you can benefit from the e-tag just to not execute the request one more time on the SharePoint side, but just to return the result from the cache. And use OData for data filtering. Yeah, it's really tempting to grab all the data that you have in the collection and filter it on the JavaScript side because it's really easy, right? But in this case, you'll get additional boost of the performance. On this side, I would like only to mention a few tools that are really useful to work with SharePoint REST. Postman and Fiddler just to execute the REST queries and to see how the traffic looks like under the hood. PNP.js, open source project, please check it. Chrome editor you already saw. And one last thing that I didn't have time to show you is a web application that lists all the available REST APIs in SharePoint. Yeah, you will be able to see it from the DICE leg from this URL. Yeah, not so much time for questions, but please, if you have any. Yeah, I'm still here.
We have to start the sponsor session. That is very important. Sorry.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem.
In this case, thank you.